Welcome to Landmark Talks Property, a podcast by Landmark Information Group that covers all things property in short and intelligent podcasts.
Hello, so today we're taking a look at the role of data and technology in early due diligence and how this can support faster, more informed decision making. I'm Josh Rains, Managing Director for Landmark Geodata, and today I'm joined by Gonzalo. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Gonzalo Marquesini. I am the founder of RenKap, which is a site survey marketplace. And in a past life, I was a consultant, got a little bit disillusioned with the affordable housing and housing crisis, and set up a tech business to help unlock land at scale.
Fabulous. And I think the importance of the discussion today and what we really want to sort of get to grips with is that combination of early usage of data, but also how technology enhancements and platforms such as Gonzalo's mentioned can really start to supplement and enhance and support professionals across the land property industry today. So as a sort of, I guess, a headline statement to start, when we talk around early stage due diligence, it's useful, or at least Gonz, you've talked to me about it before, it's useful to frame it through the RICS project stages is a great example of looking at that. And I think what we're starting to see, particularly through client discussions and engagement, is how the expectation of insight and the expectations of deep knowledge about platforms and also sites and properties and decisions to make those are being expected to be made earlier in the process and sort of far less tolerance, or maybe a particular passion for our side, of far less tolerance of late stage suppliers. And data and technology can now help teams understand risk and context right from the very start, and how on-site work becomes much more targeted as a result of that. I think the interesting question is how the combination of data first, delivery second is sort of reshaping how we approach projects, but also the supportive approach for technology in managing the operational stage of that, is supporting projects, not just sort of on a project by project basis, but fundamentally at scale. So Gonz, I guess sort of your views on early stage due diligence. What's been your experience and your approach to date?
Well, I've worked on lots of projects in the past, and I'm sure everyone else in this sector, everyone's got kind of these stories of projects that had some sort of abortive cost because something wasn't done or wasn't checked thoroughly at the early stages. Yes. And I think the goal here is to get as much data as possible and do as much of that due diligence at the right time in order to mitigate that from happening, because development, there's so many booby traps when doing development, so many at every single stage. You've got so many experts working together, it's very easy to miss things, and the goal is to try and understand what those booby traps are, avoid them early. And we're starting to see a big push now, especially with lots of our local authority clients. I don't know if you're getting this as well, Josh, is they're starting to do due diligence much sooner themselves and covering the cost themselves before they go to market. Yeah. Where in the past, it was a different market. In the past, there was more appetite from private sector and more viability was easier. So it was a bit easier to put a site on and then get the market to come into it. But now they're realizing that actually to get things built, we sometimes need to do that due diligence early ourselves, not just to progress our own projects, but also to support the marketplace, to make it easier to get into contracts with private sector. So yeah, early is the right way to do this. And what we say at RenKap is, regarding due diligence, especially regarding the survey part of it, we say the right surveys at the right time, which means the right RIBA stage, with the right surveyors, which it means vetted, professional, competent surveyors that can deliver the results. And doing that properly and thoroughly is what typically gets missed and relates to problems that we all see down the line.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think from maybe the more data lens from our side of things, over years, as more national data sets have come to light, the land use constraints, building conditions, context, the openly available environmental data, but also the sort of growing industry around planning applications. And as we start to see the MPPF changes take bite, there's going to be more digital context, or at least my expectation is more digital context from from local plans, so actually that accessibility of data becomes even earlier. And you're exactly right. I think the real statement is it doesn't replace the requirement for surveys in any shape or form. It just puts them at the right time and the right and informing the surveys which matter at the right point of an investment decision. So you talked around the public private sector start there. What's been your observation in terms of different approaches, or are they starting to become more similar?
I would say what I've seen in private sector is it's a little bit more advanced than where the public sector is. But from our private sector conversations, what we've realized is how fragmented the roles are on who is looking at what data on a project, or who's responsible for what risks.
Yes.
And you have a project team, which might be a developer, but then they've got their design team, which is project manager, architect, planning consultant, engineer, who is responsible for what risk on the project at what stage. And I don't know if you've seen that meme where all the Spider-Man are all pointing at each other. That's what it reminds me of. It's like the client gets to a point where, I don't know, they're just about to submit planning and someone says, oh, by the way, the planning authority needs this data set, or they need this piece of information, and and then the client asks, who was managing that? And they're all like, it was one of these guys. So in private sector, I see it a little bit more. It's not very clear who's doing what, because roles are very, very on one client. On one project, an architect might be taking a lot of responsibility, or there might be a project manager taking all that responsibility. But with private sector, especially with public sector, especially on public sector led development, they're taking the whole responsibility. So it's easier for them to be the ones that gather all the early stage national data sets and then decide to manage the surveys on top of that. In private sector, it's so sporadic that things get missed, and you realize you get to planning at a certain stage and you don't have the right surveys for the right point in time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it moves us on to the next sort of topic of conversation of what does the due diligence process look like today, and from my perspective, and obviously I'm going to come at this with a little bit of a bias towards data. It's the changing attitude to, well, what data is available to me early doors, and to your earlier statement, Gons, is actually moving ourselves to, I can use GIS, I can use software engineering, I can use those technologies to do as much as I can up front. And I think what good in 2026 means with regards to that is understanding the data that is being used, so you can understand its limitations and its appropriateness. There's nothing worse than sort of looking at far site-specific site and actually realizing the data is at a scale that is much more appropriate for a regional analysis and things like that. Understanding and linking them, so making sure that they have interoperability between them, so actually they can be and are designed to be used in conjunction. Then also consistency between one site and another. Do you have the coverage of a data in a site in the south of England that you do in the north of England, and can you make a consistent decision on those, particularly when you're looking at portfolio? But your approach and your founding of RenKap is obviously born out of an understanding of where those challenges with due diligence lay, so that it's slightly further down the chain. So what does good look like today from your opinion?
My view would be where we should be getting to is either public or private. We spend way too much time on a site with loads of effort, spend lots of money, lots of time, probably 8 to 9 months trying to get through planning, and then later realize that it's a no-go. We need to avoid how much time we're spending on potentially wrong sites that are not going to be progressing, and using the data to tell you to quickly understand. It's like a funnel, right? And we need to use that data set to tell you which ones should we now decide to progress a little bit more thoroughly. Okay, now these are the ones that we might want to conduct these initial surveys, and we want to maybe get an architect on board. But making sure that if you are going to commit that kind of resource, and it's not just the money, it's the time. Like, there's so much time that goes into this. If you're going to commit that sort of resource, let's commit it. Let's put it into the sites that are most likely to go ahead. And what I think good looks like in 2026 is that we through the data sets from Landmark, and then analyzing the on-site data sets from RenKap, you're able to guide people through that journey so that they know if it's a go or no go as soon as possible. So if you spend more money and more time, you're very confident it's going to go ahead. That for me is the goal. Let's stop spending time on sites that are not going to go ahead.
Yeah, and I think with a particular focus on RenKap, what are the pieces that you focused on when communicating and creating the value proposition of RenKap? What is it that adds to that you've been particularly passionate about?
Well, for us, is getting these national data sets is super valuable to understand the high level and maybe analyze sites and figure out which ones suit your kind of your filters that you need. But then the next stage of that is, okay, what's actually on that site? And you might have got a kind of flood risk analysis for government data sets, but the next step is actually understanding, okay, what does that flood risk on that specific site, how does that affect the designs that we've proposed? What mitigation factors should we consider? Is that too expensive? Do we have the budget for that? Will that ruin our viability? And you can only get to that point once you get a professional flood risk consultant on board, and you appoint them. And the same thing is for all the other disciplines. And there's about 15 different surveys that need to get done. Everything from topographical, ecology, biodiversity net gain, utilities, contamination, geotechnical, asbestos. Like, there are so many complex individual surveys, and what we've kind of streamlined and kind of made it super easy for clients is they can come to us and upload a site, instantly get 3 prices from all of our vetted surveyors on our platform, instruct them and arrange the whole process and manage all the site visits, and then get the data, and at the end use that data, you use it as well as the kind of national data sets that you've got to understand the real context of the site. By sending those experts. You need that second layer, but you should only go to that second layer once you've done the first bit. So we want to, obviously for us it's great if everyone spends loads of money on surveys, but the real goal is to help them decide when to spend the money on those surveys, which surveys, and when to either stop or to go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that sort of pipeline statement is and the sort of funnel statement is critical. It's the balance between using the availability of large-scale data sets for decision making early on, and then working through the best practice approach for survey management after that first analysis, which then takes another step in the funnel and filter, and also I guess consistency is one of the big parts from your side. It's knowing that every site, every program is going to be approached in the same sort of system manner. So actually, when you are comparing opportunities, you're comparing apples to apples as opposed to apples to oranges based on what's been looked at, how it's been vetted, and the process that sits behind it.
And that point relates to kind of what I said earlier, which is the right surveys at the right time with the right surveyors. And what I mean by right surveys is your specific site will require specific surveys. So if there's no building on the site, for example, you don't need an asbestos survey. If there's no trees on the site, you don't need tree surveys. And there's certain characteristics that tell you what surveys you might need on a specific site.
Yeah.
You need to have a lot of expertise to know exactly what surveys you need, to know what's the difference between a land contamination phase 1 and a phase 2. Why do I need a land contamination phase 1 before I do a geotechnical survey? What's the difference between a utility type D and a utility type B, and why do I need to do a topo survey before a tree survey? Understanding all of this means you need a lot of expertise. We're trying on the consistency approaches, we're standardizing that to help guide clients through that journey, so they know you need to do this one before you do that one. This is why you need to unlock this first, and you can't do that before. And that saves so much time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're doing the wrong one. You have to then wait for the next one to be done. You can't give the architects the information for them to progress designs, and making that consistent and also lowering the expertise level required means that more people can do it correctly the first time, rather than just the experts.
Yeah, no, completely appreciate. And I think, what is it, as you sort of gone through that journey and sort of introduced some of those to your clients, has there been anything that sort of surprised you about how the clients are using technology that you've maybe weren't anticipating, or benefits that you've seen come out through that sort of good practice that maybe wasn't part of your initial approach?
Yeah, it's funny. There's a few simple things. Some of our local authority clients were using us in ways that we weren't expecting, which is, they said, one of them said that one of the kind of key benefits as well is the fact that all of our surveys are on our marketplace. So when they log in and go to their site, they can see all the surveys on that site. And they're saying that actually sometimes when they do their own surveys, they have to repeat doing surveys because someone left and they don't know where they stored it. And they have to repeat doing the same surveys on the same sites. Where with us, anyone can log in and see all that information. So it's kind of like a storage database, which wasn't the goal. It's just one of the ways of working with it. And the other thing is that we've seen them doing is unlocking junior staff to be working on these projects and allowing the senior staff to be managing the developments and progressing and getting the funding in place, getting the viability in place, rather than chasing surveyors for quotes and trying to arrange site access, right? It shouldn't be done by an experienced development manager. That should be done by the junior people.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it also echoes a lot of the similarities we see behind the principles of data management. Actually, when you have appropriate sort of data governance structures and access controls, you sort of do unlock more of your team, more of the capabilities, which, going back to the top of the pipeline, means assessment of sites becomes easier because more people can look at it. And again, they're looking at the data from a single source. So I think it's really interesting seeing those similarities, that actually throughout the chain, some of the fundamentals is consistency, access, and then sort of accessibility for information, which really unlocks the value, particularly, I guess, within single organisations, public sector being a good example.
And referring to kind of the government's ambition for 1.5 million homes, obviously huge ambition, but it's kind of been designed to make people think a little bit differently. But in order to get to these sort of targets, and we need to diversify our housing supply, not just the large house builders, but local authorities and SME developers, and giving them these tools to allow them to do a quick analysis of all their sites from national data sets, and then going through the right process of doing due diligence to unlock planning. And now with the new MPPF, the validation requirements are getting standardized. What that means is it's clearer to understand what surveys are required for your specific thing. So it's making the process, by using these tools, hopefully a lot easier and lowering the barriers for direct delivery from local authorities or delivery by more SMEs without getting burnt. That's the goal, is helping them come back into the market and deliver homes on those trickier, smaller sites.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think going through the MPPF consultation and reading the ambitions of the future is to move to a quantifiable approach to planning, more maybe a sort of qualitative approach, which is very aligned to sort of the approach to data. But as you say, it's also very aligned to building process flows which are known, understood, and consistent in their approach. I think that probably leads us onto looking ahead. Sort of we start to look towards the future of property technology. We've almost gone 10-15 minutes without referencing AI, which I won't jump into, but how do you see sort of technology adoption and those sorts of things going into the future? What does that mean for the role of a surveyor, an architect, a consultant, a developer? Where do you see that sort of changing, if at all?
My view is that everyone, whatever their role is in the development ecosystem, needs to be looking at their day-to-day and also looking at what tools are available, and seeing where efficiencies can be gained. Because there's so many new ways of being able to do stuff. There's 100% efficiency being able to be gained. The one thing I would add to this is that development is there's lots of risks, it's lots of money, it's if a problem occurs, it's a big problem. So one thing that we try and be careful of is we don't use AI to kind of analyze our surveyors' reports and summarize it to clients. We don't do stuff like that. We allow our surveyors to summarize it themselves on the platform, and then it pulls all the data together for the client in a risk register. But clients ask us, are you using AI to do that? And we say, no, we use our surveyors. And there's a reason we do that. One is there's risks, and this is professional advice that needs professional indemnity insurance that clients need to be able to rely upon.
Yep.
You need to be very careful of that. So I would say that as we're using technology going forward, one is, yes, looking for these efficiencies, but there's a very fine balance between efficiencies for the business and leaking into AI advice accidentally. And if you're giving advice and it's wrong and there's a hallucination and there's an issue, how's that covered with professional indemnity? How's that covered with insurance? How are you protecting your client from that? These are questions that need to be thought about when trying to innovate.
Yeah, I can completely agree. I think it's the appropriateness of the usage that's key. I think it's critical to have an understanding of the benefits, and I think I like your statement there. It's actually assessing the operational processes, because actually the flow that we have today, both when you start reading the NPPF and some of the stages in terms of best practice for program management, are the right stages that we expect to see, and actually fundamentally probably won't change. It's the connection points as a project flows through those and who's involved that is going to be the interesting part, to avoid the Spider-Man meme. To your early point, it's being really consistent and setting expectations early doors, and then knowing where it is appropriate to use changes in technology and whether they are beneficial and not just for the sake of trying something new. And I think that point there of professional identity in this industry is fundamental. We see it both from in this industry with professional advice all the way through to the actual sale and the use case and the management of leases of the property itself. It's really knowing where the line between something being used for operational efficiency and then being used for professional advice as it steps out the door, and that's going to be critical to see as we go forwards.
Exactly, and our view, what we're doing, we're streamlining the process of easily being able to procure surveyors and then manage that whole process. And we did a report from the Ministry of Housing recently, and we proved over 4 councils with loads of projects each that we save about just over 4 months per project on pre-planning time.
Yeah.
So waiting for all these surveys and managing that whole process, and then also saving about 12 grand per site just on internal staff time. And that's our efficiencies of managing that process. But then each individual discipline underneath RenKap as kind of the survey marketplace, my view is, should be looking at how they can streamline their processes. So, for example, surveyors in the past they weren't surveying with drones, and now we are. For example, topographical surveys, we're still doing them kind of the old traditional way. And my view is the drones are getting better and the accuracy is getting better. Should we be doing those in the future with drones instead of the traditional approach at the moment? And that's for them to innovate in their own fields. But as soon as one company does something like that and reduces the time frame from, I don't know, a week to a day, then it's very hard to compete with that if you don't do something similar.
Okay, I think it's being led by the expertise of the industry that where it knows this is the benefit, this is the challenges that exist today, and these are the areas that could be led. And I think that's probably one of the big things that stands out. Again, going back to AI, it's the technology may have the capability, but actually the industry professional who would be putting a stamp on it at the end of the day is the one who's going to be able to talk coherently to the appropriate use case. So I think you already referenced the NPPF. I think one of the interesting things is that as we go forwards with the use of technology and the use of assessing operational efficiencies is the relationships we see. So talking about the NPPF, that's a sort of policy approach. It's supported by some of the announcements around the use of AI for assessing planning applications, and then it's also supported by the statement of investment in planners and wanting to bring more planners back into the industry. And actually, the ambition to move for that 1.5 million new homes is only really going to move as fast as the slowest part of that chain. It's either going to be the technology, the policy, or the people. And actually, you can do all the enhancers into one of them, but if fundamentally one of those sort of building blocks isn't quite there or isn't staying at the same pace, it's going to be another really challenging scenario. Going back to sort of the sort of final question to this sort of section, are there any other data or technologies you see becoming more widespread to support early stage due diligence or the wider planning process? Anything else that stands out from your side?
I'm just amazed how I keep hearing about new solutions, new companies coming out. So it is evolving, and it evolves quite fast. One thing I would mention is how much we talked about it earlier. How much time and effort it takes to get a project to a stage where you think you can actually proceed, and pass information on to an architect or to the design team, and you're confident that now that's going to go ahead. One thing we've done recently is obviously we're working with Landmark, where clients use your initial data set to identify potential sites, and then they use RenKap to figure out the on-site risk specifically with technical due diligence. The next stage, and something we've been working with a company called BlockType, which helps to then create massings on a specific site based on policy, but also the unit types that client has uploaded onto their system, which gives pretty accurate massings. But now that we've partnered with them, they're getting our constraints data, so all the data from all the reports. So actually, instead of just doing a massing, you now know, I can't put a site there because there's root protection area of a very big tree. There's flooding here. There's ecology issues here. There's utilities there. So it's quite an accurate representation of what you can actually fit on the site, policy compliant, but also constraint compliant. So we're now getting people to a further stage where they've got the high level data, the on-site data, initial potential massings with accommodation schedules, and they're pretty confident of what they can build. And now is the point where you go and get your architect and design team and give them all this information so that they design it once and correctly. They don't design it and then have to redesign because they've now found out some issues about the site. So giving people that information, that's a really exciting thing, where now that can be done relatively easily, cheaply, and better than it was done before.
Fabulous.
Oh, one thing I would mention is viability is the biggest challenge right now for a lot of clients we speak with, developers and private sector developers as well, public and private. And my view is that prop tech solutions don't resolve viability as a whole, because it's a macroeconomic issue, and there's boom cycles in the industry. But one thing that it definitely does do to help viability is, one, mitigate risks, so you don't, something doesn't crop up and then you got to take it out of your profits to fix. And then the second thing is time. If we're able to speed up the time of pre-planning and kind of even further down the line, then we reduce how much time those clients are borrowing money for, how much resources those clients have already invested, so that hopefully the ones that go ahead produce the right ROI to allow them to deliver homes at scale. So there's ways where that viability question is starting to get supported. I wouldn't say fully resolved because it's macroeconomic, but supported with some of these solutions that are in the market.
Yeah, I it's exactly right. I think it's that relationship of the capabilities of some of the technology and also data solutions that we're seeing in market, and that we actively support to our clients, alongside the experience of the industry in terms of the perfect match between really enhancing the capability to understand viabilities. And again, back to our earliest, but at the earliest stage, bringing the information to the right point to make the right decision at that time, and with all intents of making it earlier, but also making it more robust, I think is the summary that we're getting to today. So, Gonz, thank you for joining me today. Really enjoyed our discussion. I think across the board, we've covered early stage due diligence, the operational processes of today, the future, how we see some of the technology enhancers sort of coming to light over the next few years, but then also the imperative nature of having the right expertise in the room to inform. Yes, you may have the data, but you still need to have the professional opinion. You still need to have the robustness of that insight to make sure it's robust and can be relied on, not just now, but for the length of the program. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to speaking to you all soon in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Landmark Talks Property. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please hit subscribe. This podcast is for general purposes only, The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not constitute professional advice.